we partner with businesses around the community, so Shenanigans, PKSA, Karate, Energy Zone, Freedom Kitchen. We partner with the community to provide elective courses, hands-on experiences for our students. We also partner with House of Providence, a local foster home, to provide educational services to those students. We partner with mosques who may be doing religious studies in the morning and need flexible education in the afternoon, as well as some other religiously affiliated organizations. And during COVID, we saw the enrollment in OVA and our staff balloon. But we also saw around the state of Michigan a lot of online schools kind of decrease in size and even close. However, after COVID, we have continued to grow. We enrolled 600 students over this summer. So we are growing at a very stable rate still even after COVID. Next slide. Oh, there we go.
Good evening. This slide just has a really nice picture of some of our staff. This fall we had the opportunity to attend adaptive schools training through the Thinking Collaborative in Oakland Schools. It was a wonderful opportunity. Our administrative staff, counseling staff, and many of our instructional leaders attended. Adaptive Schools is a program that helps us learn how to better form and sustain high-functioning teams. So we spent a fantastic 4 days, and now we're bringing those skills and that knowledge back to our larger OVA team to infuse these skills throughout so that we can more effectively function as PLCs and think and learn together.
So at the beginning of the presentation, moments ago, you saw that there was Oxford Virtual Solutions as part of OVA. So that is the wing of Oxford Virtual Academy that partners with public and non-public schools. We have our share time, which is non-public schools. We partner with such as St. Joe's down the road. We provide courses to private schools who are looking. Spanish is very popular. Keyboarding is very popular. Sign language is very popular. They look to us to provide courses such as that. So we have 28 shared time partner schools. Online and seated course enrollments are what they take through us. So sometimes we have staff that go on site. And sometimes we teach purely virtual. We have over 4,000 students enrolled, approximately 785 FTE. So some of our students at the shared time schools, they may take 1 or 2 courses. And so even though we service 4,000 students, we have 785 FTE. So that is going to be larger than any elementary school at Oxford and a little bit smaller than OMS. Our consortium, so public schools, we partner with Portland High School to provide them with high school electives. Romeo High School, we have 325 consortium students, so other students that attend other public schools. And Oxford functions as their course provider. So they take online courses through us. They have Oxford Virtual Academy teachers, and we provide them those elective courses.
One of our points of pride this year at Oxford Virtual is that we've begun year 1 of a 5-year process of designing our own custom-created proprietary courses. So the advantage of creating our own courses are that we can better align with the rest of the district in terms of common assessments, course order, and things like that. But most importantly, we can better meet the needs of our students. So we're really excited to begin this process of creating our own custom courses. One of the other pieces that we're really excited about is that these courses will better meet the needs of diverse learners and students with disabilities. So there are a lot of features built in, ADA compliant, thinking about, how are things laid out on the page, thinking about brain research, how should information be presented, closed captioning, all of those pieces that really make learning accessible to all of our learners and beneficial to a wide variety of learners. So we're really excited about that. Some of the courses that we've started creating already, we decided to start with math and English. We eventually added world history because there was a high need there to customize for our students, our world history course. And we started some of our course B because there are a little bit less requirements. So we wanted to start out as our first go at creating our own courses, so it is quite a lot to learn. Another thing that we're really proud of is that this year we've started creating our own advisory course. So it will align with the advisory courses at OMS and OHS, but it will be our own OVA online advisory course. And I'll talk a little bit more about the advisory course later on.
So at Oxford Virtual Academy, we have 564 full-time elementary students. We are the largest elementary school in the district. So OVA's elementary focus this year has been on intervention. So we did a data analysis over the last year, and we really noticed that at OVA, we have, number one, our population is becoming less transient, but we are still noticing that when students first enroll into OVA, that they are struggling academically at a much higher rate than students who have been within OVA's system for at least 2 to 3 years. And so really taking steps and strides to target that demographic and that population. We partner with a lot of at-risk students. And so what happens when we have students who maybe during COVID or maybe their homeschooling curriculum wasn't Common Core aligned, or there were maybe we see a lot of students who have jumped from school to school to school. So when they first enter into OVA, how are we identifying those students sooner? And then how are we intervening faster? So we have new IRIP procedures at OVA. And essentially what we've done is we've moved up the screening. We've screened sooner than we previously did. And on top of that screening process, we have made the effort to, if you are identified for an IRIP, that student will receive 4 days of intervention compared to the previous 2. So the research shows that if you want to close the achievement gap, that child needs consistent intervention, and they need that intervention at least 4 days a week if you want to close the achievement gap. So we've added paras to the staff, and we have been, with fidelity, implementing that 4-day-a-week intervention with at least 2 of those days being provided to the child directly from their teacher in a synchronous fashion. So again, sitting down with your teacher, reading with that teacher, establishing that relationship, and continuing to target those areas of need. Delta Math, this is our first year using Delta Math. Again, we partner with a large contingency of the homeschool demographic in Southeast Michigan. And the thing about the homeschool population is the curriculum that they use prior to partnering with OVA, a lot of the times, maybe they get to multiplication later on, maybe they get to fractions later on. And so, but what happens is once they partner with us, we're a public school, we're held to the Common Core, and our students take the M step. So using Delta Math this year, really targeting those students who are coming in. Fluency has been a big target area, fractions at the 4th and 5th grade level, and making sure that when a student comes in, we identify, hey, what did you use previously coming to OVA? Whatever you used is fine, but making sure that we're trying to fill some of those math gaps that we've seen over the past couple years. And again, you know, due to either curriculum choice, movement, or COVID. And then common writing practices. So at OVA, you'll hear a curriculum presentation from me a little bit later on. We have a lot of different curriculum options, which is wonderful. Choice is great, but when it comes to common writing practices at OVA, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get some consistency. So our teachers can work peer-to-peer, so we can understand how are children learning the writing process at OVA. That differs vastly depending on the curriculum at OVA, but what we're trying to do is tighten that up a bit to ensure that we have a common understanding of where our children are at in terms of their writing growth. So, points of pride. After COVID, you may have read reports of, hey, you know what, we're seeing that students in online learning settings, there has been an increased element of isolation, some effects on social emotional health after COVID. And so what we've been trying to do is how can we, as an online school, aggressively target that and build community within OVA. We're not going to put a child on a laptop 6 hours a day and say that's an education. So how are we building community? How are we fostering peer-to-peer interaction for our students? And how are we making sure that they're learning those soft skills? So our point of pride is the fostering of community at Oxford Virtual Academy. On the left, you'll see a hybrid location in Farmington Hills. We have like 150 students who attend there full-time. In the center with the person pointing, you'll see that is a hybrid location in Brighton. The student looking at through the microscope, that is a hybrid location in Rochester. To the right of that, we have a hybrid location in Oxford at Lake Point Church. And then below them is Darul Wahi, which is a location that we have in Detroit. So trying to make sure that students who join Oxford Virtual Academy have the flexibility of online learning, but again, we are addressing those needs for community, for peer-to-peer interaction, and fostering those growth, that skill set outside of just academics.
All right, Oxford Virtual Academy secondary grades 6 through 12. We have 475 full-time students. Of those, 190 are hybrid students and 285 are fully online students. At Oxford Virtual, we're fully committed to a whole child approach. We work very, very hard to meet each student where they are academically and in terms of their social emotional needs. As part of our identity in embracing a whole child approach, and in support of our district's 3-year recovery plan, we are looking to pilot an SEL curriculum this year in March with the rest of the district. So we're excited about that. And that brings me back to just talking a little bit about our online advisory course, which I mentioned earlier. So we're beginning to create that course, and it will be a place where students have the opportunity to learn some social emotional learning lessons, connect with their counselors, build better relationships with their mentor teachers, work on their college and career readiness, their EDPs, and some Aaron's Law lessons. So we're really excited to have all of those pieces find a home in our advisory course. All right, some secondary points of pride, just some pictures to put, some visuals to the words. This year, we're really proud that this is the very first year for Oxford Virtual's National Honor Society OVA chapter. So we inducted 15 students this year, and we're really proud of them. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see some of those students. They wrapped some gifts for some needy families in the area this holiday season. Some other points of pride in the center bottom there, during Wildcat Remembrance Week, we hosted a variety of activities for students to come in, be with their peers, be with their teachers, just be together and focus on wellness, do some fun activities, some relaxing activities. So in that picture, they are making relaxing stress putty that smells like lavender, so that was really fun. In the upper right-hand corner, we have students who came in just to decorate some cookies, so we did some cookie decorating. And just something else that I thought was really nice to add is at our most recent Professional Learning Day, our staff donated just loads and loads and loads of clothes to Oxford open-handed, so really proud of our staff. Our MTSS process is something else that we're really proud of at the secondary level. We have 3 child study teams. We have our high school team, our middle school team, and our hybrid team who meet regularly to talk about students, talk about where their struggles are, talk about interventions, implement interventions, and progress monitor those interventions. Another new piece this year is that we have begun using EduClimber, which is a program where we're able to input our interventions so that we can look at that data in a more useful way. So it's been a lot of learning this year, and I'm really proud of our teams. They've really come a long way. In terms of our interventions this year, we are also piloting Delta Math. I think we have 8 students currently in our pilot program. We're focusing mainly on middle school students as they leave elementary. How do we continue to support those students who have been receiving interventions and new students who come to us with some deficit areas. Our ELA team and our instructional coaches have been talking very excitedly about piloting a reading intervention program called Read Naturally, so that's something that we are also exploring. And as I mentioned, we are now logging all of our Tier 2 interventions in addition to our IEP and our 504 accommodations in EduClimber. This year we also partnered with Oakland Schools Special Education and Literacy Consultant to talk about how our courses address the needs of diverse learners. We talked about UDL and ADA accommodations. We have a lot of students with anxiety, things like that. So how do we meet their needs? Another new piece at Oxford Virtual this year is our professional learning communities. So this is the very first year that OVA has really dived into professional learning communities. Our instructional coaches have done just a whole lot of very, very thoughtful work in how to bring professional learning communities to our teachers and do so in a way that is very purposeful so that we are doing things correctly. So we're following the DeFore model, and you see some books up there. We did some book studies, so very thoughtful, very, very proud of our PLC teams. Some additional pictures. In the upper left, I don't know if you guys, I was a teacher, right? So I'm like, Janet, our principal, is presenting at our Winterfest MLK Day Professional Learning. In the center top, we have one of our wellness activities was knitting. We invited students to come in and do knitting, and I was astounded. Kids came out of the woodwork. They showed up just to learn knitting. So there's one of our students with Mrs. Green, one of our ELA teachers, learning how to knit. In the upper right, we have teachers working together to learn more about the data that we have in terms of our school improvement process. Lower left, every Friday in the secondary lab between 3 and 4 is game time. So students are able to just come in, hang out together, play some games. So there we have two students playing chess. In the middle bottom, our PLC teams created posters to talk a little bit about what they've been working on, and they presented those posters at our professional learning, and we had a gallery walk so that we could all learn a little bit about what the other teams had been working on. And then in the far left corner, 2 students just in our secondary lab. One of them was working on a pottery project, and so she's just proudly showing off her pottery work. And we can't forget our hybrid students as well. So just some hybrid pictures. Well, first in the lower left, this is just a student at our, not a hybrid student, but at our STEMI. So the STEMI, the Oxford Virtual students were able to visit the STEMI as well. So that student is doing a VR activity for science, technology, engineering, and math exposure activity. And then at our hybrid locations, in the upper left, this is our hybrid location in Shelby Township, Covades. That's our karate group. We've got some Halloween celebrations in the lower right, Christmas raffle giveaway activity, and just some students working together at one of our hybrid locations. So that concludes our presentation. I'm sure you have many questions. What questions do you have?
I don't have a question, but I have comments.
Sure. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you so much for that. What a great presentation.
Thank you.
That was a lot. I was really excited talking about PLCs, hearing you talk about PLCs and how much, and this adaptive schools process, just working together as teams, and because we know how much better we can do things when we're working together. And that was really exciting. And all the different, I hope folks were listening at all the different things that you do. It's not just kids going on a computer all day. This is totally different. So thank you so much for the great work, and it was a great presentation. I don't have any questions. I probably will later, but I have to digest everything you just shared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody? I do have a question. We talked about the consortium students. Some students come from other districts and they take classes online with Oxford. Just out of my curiosity, why wouldn't they take them in their home district, and why would they come here?
So you'll find that there are a lot of public schools around the state of Michigan that do not have a virtual wing of their public school system. And when you do not have a wing of your public school system that specializes in virtual learning, what you have to do is you have to outsource those courses typically. So you'll have companies like Edgenuity. You may partner with Michigan Virtual. You may go through GenNet to find other providers. And so what we've done is through our connections and so we attend a lot of conferences with other school districts. What has happened is when instead of outsourcing those courses to one of these third-party vendors, they contact us and they say, hey, how would you like to be our third-party vendor instead of going through Michigan Virtual or going through Edgenuity? And so we have essentially become the vendor because They understand that all of our teachers are Michigan certified. We've been doing this for over 10 years, and they have gone through and met with us and are firmly believe in the quality of the product that we produce versus some of those other third-party vendors.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to add, and that is a very good decision on their part, because the quality is here. And way above what you can buy out on the open market, in my opinion. I've seen their work.
Okay,
I do have an addition.
yes, Mary.
I waited for everybody else. Another point that I just wanted to put some emphasis on is the focus on diverse learners. And the attention, the one-on-one kind of attention and interventions that they get. I think that's really important to meeting people where they are. I think that's fantastic. We talked about the 4-day-a-week interventions. How long have we been doing that? Do we have any data on that?
So-
Our own data?
Yeah, and so we did our initial screener. So just like the other schools in the district, we use Fontes and Pinnell. What we do though is we use the Fontes and Pinnell as that initial touch point. We are currently in the process of collecting our winter data. So that is a policy that was put into place this current year. So we are currently in the process of getting that next data point to see, all right, so what types of benefits are we seeing, and then which demographic is benefiting the most in particular. Again, with our eye on those brand new students to OVA who are typically coming in a bit younger or a bit lower than our students who have been with OVA for multiple years.
Well, and the sooner we can intervene, as you were saying it too, the sooner we can intervene, the better. If we can do this right at the beginning, that just helps the student from that point on. It just makes the rest of it so much easier. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 4, prearranged requests to address the board. We have none. Item 5, consent agenda. We have 5 different items that are on the consent agenda. We have the meeting minutes from the 24th for our regular meeting, the 24th, our closed session, the minutes of February 4th, our board workshop meeting, and bills payable, and then we have some new hire recommendations. Do I have a motion, please? Go ahead.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there support? Support, James. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Motion carries.
So a little bit different. Superintendent's report, item 6.
Yes, thank you. Before I go to the items that are on the agenda, I would just like to say that today was a difficult day, but we had school open, the kids came, and our staff was very present. We had a lot of extra help, and the day went very well. I really credit Oxford staff. They're amazing in terms of what they can pull off. My administrative team and I were texting in kind of a virtual cabinet meeting from about 8:30 to midnight last night, and by the time we were done, we had every building covered with extra counselors, extra staff, substitute teachers, extra security, and plans in place to meet the needs of the kids. You'll see fewer of them here tonight because after and 2 of them did not obey me because I directed them to not be here if they didn't have agenda items, because they really had a sleepless night and they have to hit it again tomorrow morning. So I just want to say kudos to the Oxford folks that really did a great job. And want to thank Erin because Danny had to be with her daughter in East Lansing, so we lost our communication director during all of this, and Erin was willing to come in and work with me, and we teamed out the district communication, so thank you, Erin. Yes. So, on the agenda, I want to talk about the RFP. As you know, we did a request for proposals for security services, and we had 8 companies submit proposals for that. We had a very high-level standard for employee qualifications and experience. We had a high level of standard for the kind of training folks would need to go through before they came to work with us. And we had several companies meet all of those conditions. We had a committee review those 3 companies and came up with a recommendation of Fortis. Not only did they meet all the requirements of the bidding process, they also met all the quality standards that were specified in the RFP. Their training for their employees aligns with our training. They train in de-escalation, use of force knowledge, policy, training for their employees that supports school atmosphere, which was very important for us. Some of these companies did not have a lot of experience in K-12 schools, and we have a climate culture that we want to keep in place here. Obviously, they do the CPR, first aid, AED, and the best thing is our own open school security people will be able to train with them. So there'll be consistency in practice across the board. They're currently contracted with many districts of our size and makeup. All of the employees that work in our district will have prior law enforcement, public service, first responder, or military experience. And prior to placing security personnel on our campuses, they'll provide us with detailed bios of every person they're bringing in that we'll be able to review ahead of time. They're going to be on-site, fully staffed by February 27th. They're working with ESS, our current provider, as some employees from ESS meet the standards of the new RFP, and should those employees want to continue with us as Fortis employees, they'll be able to do that. The contract is for 1 year. We'll have a stringent evaluation process in place to see how they're doing, and if it goes well, then we'll renew. So that's the security firm. The other item I have is we did a tweaking, I'd call it, of the organizational chart. As I worked with cabinet members, it became clear that there was perhaps an imbalance of load on a couple of the positions, and we wanted to balance that. So if you look at the organizational chart, the changes are the Executive Director of School Safety, Operation Technology, and Student Services, who is Allison Woolman. She is the School Safety Administrator. She's the Director of Cybersecurity and Operational Technology. She also does student services around enrollment, pupil accounting, and the Discipline Tribunal. What we removed from that position was Food Services and Transportation, and we put that back to the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations, Sam, who is here tonight because he's presenting you an amended budget later, and that kind of really equalized out that load. The rest of the chart is what we have presented to you before, and there are no changes, so I won't go over it unless you have questions. That's my superintendent's report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions on that chart? I think it's balanced out, especially with the loads that everybody's putting on. And I want to just tag on something that Dr. Markovich was stating earlier about the staff, if I may. Last night, I believe, was the number around 50 or so students. Staff came in, reached out to as many Oxford graduates that they knew of at Michigan State so that they could contact them, make sure, number one, that they were okay. First and foremost, that they were okay. Number two, if they needed anything, if they needed any support. The staff went out of their way to make sure that happened. So that is just one more thing that our staff did last night and continues to do today Another step that I believe is in the process of all of our employees who have students at Michigan State, they're being touched base with so that we can make sure that they're being taken care of as well. So they're not, this is more important than being with my family that may need me at this time. So just a couple of additional things I wanted to point out. So thank you very much to our staff, those that are here and those that are not. It's getting pretty bad. I can't even see this without putting my glasses on. Board of Education matters. We have, that was presented last time, it was our field trip, the travel club. This was the field trip that was to London, correct?
Yep.
So there were some questions and there was a request for a mock itinerary. Obviously, it's a year plus out, so it may change a little bit. They provided that, and with everything that's going on, Dr. Markovich,
Yes,
go ahead.
I received no questions about the itinerary, so I am assuming that you are comfortable with it. And of course, this club would love to have you approve it so they could start working on getting all of the pieces together to make this trip a reality.
So there is a motion on the table. Would somebody like to make that motion? Mary?
Move to approve the Oxford High School field trip request to London, United Kingdom, March 23 through 30, 2024.
Is there support? Support Amanda? Any discussion?
I do have a question after I made the motion. Is that the correct wording? Oxford High School food tour, are we supposed to say travel club in there somewhere? I just noticed it.
I don't know that it's necessarily,
It's a field trip
would
request.
just be a field
That's
trip
okay
request.
like that? Okay,
Yeah, it's
just
our
wanted to be
students,
sure.
So we wouldn't have to go down. Yeah,
Okay.
It's fine as it is
Okay.
been read. Anybody else? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item B, Board of Education committees. We have Finance Committee, Safety and Security Committee. Do you want to just make sure that we have is there any detail around that we want to provide? I mean, those are the two. We want to add anything?
No, those are the two committees, and I think people have indicated their preference for what committee they'd like to serve on.
I think I've got all those emails as you did. I'd like to have these, done ASAP.
It would be helpful if they were formed tonight, because we could start the committees working, especially, well, both finance and safety and security.
Yeah, because we're going to be getting a budget
Right.
right now, so we'd like to kind of get that going. All right, so we had, well, there's also another one. There's Policy Committee, which has already been filled by Amanda and Mary, correct? All right, and then we had Safety and Security, which I remember James and Heather and Mike. And then our Finance Committee, we had Aaron and,
It should be me, but that would give me two.
that's all dependent upon your schedule, because I didn't get, did anybody else send, you did.
Yeah,
You said Safety and Finance, correct?
No, safety and add a third to the policy committee. So we have
Okay.
3 on the policy committee that way for scheduling and stuff, so we can keep that stuff. Being that I voiced interest in the security, that would also coincide with the policy stuff, just to have a validation there and interest in that. And that would put me on 2, and then to your question, that would put you on 2 if you wanted it, but, you know.
As long as your schedules permit it, I don't,
I have
I
some
don't-
flexibility during the day, and I just wanted to offer that up, because I know the policy committee
Correct.
meets during that, they all do, right? But,
I'm not opposed to having 3 people on any committees.
okay.
I'm just trying to be, I'm trying to be mindful of people's schedules, their work schedules and everything like that. So If you don't mind being on 2, that's great.
Or if you'd prefer just finance, because you're the treasurer, James
And then let
could fill
James-
that other position at 2. You could do it either way.
My heart is with both, so.
That look on her face is like she wants to stay on both?
I do.
Yeah,
I
and-
do, because of those are the two things that I'm really interested in.
Okay. And you had expressed that to me, and I don't think that there's a change in your,
There's not,
in your,
so I'll make it
Okay.
work.
yeah, we can have 3. I have
Okay.
there's no reason why we shouldn't or we can't.
And I think a third person, I don't know what we have to do about a third person on policy.
There's,
Well-
it's okay.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
I was
yeah.
like, just as we don't have a quorum, right, is
Right.
where we run into an
Yes.
issue with any committee.
Correct.
is fine.
As long as this continues to be posted in the way it is,
Yeah.
it's okay. We
I
can
think
just
that's
make,
a good idea.
we can, and we fluctuated from 2 to 3, back down to 2, and so 3 is not a problem.
I was like, 'cause correct me if I'm wrong, our workload on the policy stuff is kind of big just to catch up from COVID and everything, so, yeah, that way we can get through things. All right.
All right, and were you good with the 1?
I'm fine with the 1.
Okay.
That would be fine. Fine with it.
Okay,
I don't need
and, okay. All right,
You don't have to be on a committee.
No,
either.
I
Like, don't feel
no,
like you're not.
But I would like to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Safety.
Okay, so
so
we have
that's,
finance, I'll summarize, finance, Aaron and Mary,
mhm,
and, safety is James, Heather, and Mike,
correct.
and policy is James, Mary, and Amanda.
Very good. That's perfect.
Do you want a motion for that as presented by? or
No,
do we
because
just
they're
vote?
appointed committees,
Okay.
so that's not really
Okay.
something that we need to vote
Okay.
particularly on. And if for some reason things change in your personal life and you can't make some, and you feel it's too much, just let us know, we can change it up however it goes, okay? Thank you for doing those. It'll be interesting when you get to see a lot of the different facets. And that finance committee is always fun.
Still laughing.
Sam is chuckling over there. Okay. Yep. Item C, Oakland County School Board Association, often referred to as the OCSBA, proposed resolution and changes, presentation with approval on February 28th, 2023. All right. Do we have, it was the email that we received. Were there any questions as to what you saw in that email that you, questions on? Mary is really our contact person with the OCSBA, so anything that comes up with that, she's probably the best person to go to first.
You wanna sit down and talk anytime?
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of things were just to keep in, to clear up some language, and to make things, easier to be able to do. The legislative priorities, stayed pretty close. Did anybody have any questions?
Mm-mm.
New amended, okay. Fantastic.
Okay.
Then, so, we have, this time to review it, go back over it. They do, in order for it to, these to pass by the OCSBA, we need I believe it's a super majority of districts. If the OCSBA is going to adopt something that says, we're speaking for school boards in Oakland County, they have to have a super majority of the districts in Oakland County vote affirmative, and then it becomes their talking points. So we have another meeting to review it, and then we'll bring it up for a vote.
Okay.
At the next meeting, it's due by the March 3rd, so as long as we vote on it in
So that would
February.
be, we would have to vote on it for the next meeting, so just
Correct.
plan on that. If between now and our next meeting you have a question, feel free to get with Mary. If there are none, then we'll just come to the table and vote on it. I want to backtrack. As far as policy goes, it was brought up, I think, by James. It would be convenient to have some of our policies electronically for board members. So if you don't have an access, maybe you're on vacation and you want to check our policies, you can just do it electronically. So we are going to have those.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it sounds like a great time. I want to hang out with that guy. But we also have 6 binders with all the updated Neola policies. And so we had to pay for them, but it was well worth the investment, because what that did is it brought all the revisions that we've had in the past, and it brought it up to forward to current date. So you won't see revision 1, revision 2, revision 3. I mean, some of those were from the 80s. So it was good for us to do that. So James, thanks for the suggestion. And it is in the process. And like I said, you can see Angela if you ever want to check one of those out of the library. All right. We have some policies that we have first readings for. This is usually what you love to do.
No, I'm not doing it this time.
No?
No.
Okay. Anybody want to read?
Policy committee can do it.
Policy committee?
Yep.
All
we
right.
can do it.
You here, take your first swing at it.
All right, so we can just start with going down the list.
Yep.
The 144.1. In the meeting, we decided that it would be best to not include items D and E, which just talks about being reimbursed for printed materials and reimbursed for school functions, which we don't think is necessary, but then also adding that entertainment expenses relating to alcoholic beverages are certainly not reimbursable, so that's an addition. As far as the totals, we just lined those up with what is in the union contract currently for staff, so just to make it uniform across.
Okay.
Do you want to go questions per each policy, or do you want me to just run through them all first?
No, let's just go ahead and run through them,
questions at
and
the
then if
end?
there's any questions, we can address those.
Sounds good. Okay, the next one then would be 0166. This is relating to the board agenda. On here, we changed, as was discussed last time, everywhere it says participation, changed it to public comment. As far as community members putting items, asking for items to be placed on the agenda, we tightened that rule up so that they can have 2 business days prior, so that would be the Friday before the meeting, to request that. Same things with, they have to include their address, their name, and that goes to the superintendent and board president. As far as that goes, I think that was the majority of that. Moving on to 0167.3. This was, I know it looks like a lot, but it really is just the same thing where we changed participation to comment in most of these. And this one is addressing adding the second public comment period.
Correct.
So for that one, the community members would submit their request by 4 p.m. on the Monday, the day prior to the meeting, so that cabinet and whomever is presenting has an opportunity to answer any questions during their presentation. This does not change the second public comment period. That stays the same, no restrictions. You don't have to email, you don't have to, it's all the same, but we're just adding the second opportunity, and that one is for items relating specifically to the agenda. That's pretty much that one. Okay, the next one is 5350. There's a few things in here that we had to address. There were 2 items that you could choose. One being that the training also include self-injury behaviors, and we thought that that would be a good idea to include for staff. And then the second one spoke to what the superintendent will implement. Now, there were some things on this one, and I believe you had the email where, so this policy is relating to the administrative guideline 5350, which has been in place since 2011. And then there was also a procedure that was introduced in 2019, but there hadn't actually been a board policy. And so one thing that this was, a personal opinion, so the board will decide if they want to follow through on. In both the 2011 guideline and the 2019 procedure, in all steps, whether it's low, medium, high risk, one of the most important things is to make sure that the student does not have anything dangerous on them, such as a weapon or substance capable of inflicting a mortal wound. So I'd like to see that we go a step further and we put it right in the policy, even though it is already in the administrative guidelines since 2011 and the procedure. I just thought that was something important, and so that is why that is not a Neola edition, that was a,
Oxford edition.
yes. Moving on to 5517.01, this is the bullying policy, which I have to give great credit to Vicki. She is in the process of developing the administrative guidelines to go along with this, and they will be very robust and thorough, as she has assured us, and she has really, in a month here, done so much. And she's really on top of this, so I just wanted to preface that with this policy, that there will be an administrative guideline forthcoming. So a lot of these were mainly Neola updates. There were a few things, so on page 2, where originally it had put the stipulation that the principal or other administrator will immediately investigate and come to a conclusion within 3 days. We thought that while that's a good goal to have, you also have to think, do we want quickness or effectiveness, right? So you don't want the job to be done hastily and maybe miss things, so we decided that to put in there the immediately commence the investigation, promptly continue to investigate and document all, would be better than placing this kind of arbitrary time limit on administrators, so that they have the ability to keep it going and get the data that they might need that otherwise they wouldn't with a 3-day. And so Vicki has also assured us that the administrative guideline will elaborate on that as far as the process and the quality assurances to make sure that promptly and immediately is followed and that they're not confined by 3 days. On to page 3, the restorative practices component. The item B originally said that these restorative practice circles have to be approved by the victim's parents or legal guardian unless the victim is at least 15 years old. But going by that, that's really less than half of our high school population, and personally thought it was important that they all receive parent approval to do that, so that the parents are fully aware of what's happening and consenting to that, since they are minors. And then also in item C, there was not an indication that the restorative practices team would be more than one person. And so thinking about a situation where it would just be 2 students and potentially 1 certified staff member, this ensures that there will be more than one involved in that decision, more than one certified with their eyes on it, and that it's not less likely to something fall through, right? So it would have to include more than one. And then on the last page, just the word structure wasn't great on the definition of harassment. So we just took out a few of those so that it includes all of those. Age, race, cultural background, everything, and so that it sounded that they were all equally as important, because they certainly are. One thing that we kind of disagreed on and are bringing to the board, and I know it's in a few policies, but the one that kind of started it all.
Actually, Amanda, before we get to that, I have a
Yeah.
question on the part that we struck. Vicki, oh, sorry. Vicki, we struck that part with the age. I had a question about if that, how it was written in the statute and if we were required to put that in.
No, we called Neola and checked off with MASB or with Neola in this case? Neola in this case. And this is a may, not a must.
Okay.
So we can easily take out the age 15 running their own.
Okay,
I-
thank you.
My opinion on that is, parents need to be involved. Parents need to be involved in the discipline or know what's going on in the school when their kid has an issue. We shouldn't be in a position where we're removing that opportunity. So I like that change very much.
I just say one more thing about the bullying. We have administrative guidelines right now that have been in place for quite a while, and those are being reviewed now at the elementary level by all the principals, and as well as at the secondary level by cabinet fully, and by some of our other resource and recovery people who are involved in these kinds of investigations. And we will be able to upgrade them to the policy as you are, once you approve it, but also adapt it better. You know, second grade is a little bit different than 10th grade, and we have to have guidelines that can be flexible enough to meet both of those age groups. They don't necessarily are going to have to all be the same cookie cutter in every situation. So those are being revised. Hopefully all of that revision will be done in time for the rewrite of the codes of conduct, student code of conduct as well as athletic code of conduct, because these policies and those guidelines may actually impact those codes. So that's the process of where this will go. And Amanda, you were asking which policy that first came up on? It was the second one you presented, 0144.1.
Thank you. So,
I'm sorry, it was
Oh,
the
wait, no,
second
that's-
one, 0166. 0144 was the first one.
so this one is more of just a grammatical thing. In the sentence, it's talking about the superintendent and information relating to the district with such recommendations as what the original says is he or she shall make, and the proposed addition is or they, and just to me personally, that's, you know, a plural possessive pronoun, and so it doesn't sound right. And I think that we could probably find something better, like the superintendent or something, or even leave it as he or she, but they, when you're talking about one specific person, was off to me. So if you replaced it with the superintendent, or in other ones where it came up, it could be the student, which, you know, accommodates inclusivity and all of that, and I feel just makes a little bit more sense. But again, that's a really minor, and that's the only thing that in our over 2 hours of questions and Vicki's patience that we didn't finalize.
And I will add to the other side of that discussion about the use of pronouns. Neola is already going through in most of their policies that they're updating and taking out gender-specific pronouns, so it doesn't say he, she. We don't speak like that. We don't say you know, himself, herself when we are speaking in sentences. And my position was that we are an inclusive district. You know, we are here to serve every single student and support every single staff member. And I think that every single student is better served by non-gender specific pronouns. We have students and staff members who maybe prefer not to use gender specific pronouns, and I think that the best way to support every single student in the district is to change things to they or the superintendent or the student. But my thought was as we're going through each of the policies, just to make those corrections as we're going through. And whatever would flow better. Sometimes it sounds better when you say the student. So I just wanted to do those as we go. And that was the recommendation that we couldn't bring to the board on all these policies because there's two of us. So that's something that we'll all have to consider between the first and second readings and bring back questions and discussion to the table on.
When you're looking at academic writing, what I would say is and then the descriptor is the appropriate thing. You would also look to avoid the word this, because what's this, right? So if we're gonna go through, because I see in the 5350, there's himself, herself, so you're starting down a slope that you need to make sure that if you're gonna do it for one, we do it for all. And that, I would be fine supporting that change. I think, if we're gonna be an academic institution, we write to academic rigor. My personal opinion.
I believe that's the way, the direction that we should shift. Reason being is, we had this discussion before at one time, and there was some conversation about it. And at that point, we discussed exactly what Mary said. It was the student, or the superintendent, or the teacher, or the staff member, however that looks. That is as Aaron pointed out, it's the describer. We have to maintain consistency. And the consistency would be what you stated, the student, the superintendent, staff member. That's the place for us to be, in my opinion. But it seems like we can have that discussion. We can have that, it seems like we're pretty much all on that page anyways. So we can start with that idea moving forward.
So what we do today is we'll have a motion to approve the first reading of the policies, which brings them onto record. And then we all have the opportunity to bring our comments to the next meeting, share your comments with somebody on the policy committee. The public has an opportunity to comment. This information's on the website, yes, Angela? So this is on the website, so the public has an opportunity, students, if they want to read through, and we want the input. So now is the time to do that. You can send an email with your comments, Yeah. Right, so this is the time now where to do that after we introduce this onto the record, which is what we're doing today.
Yep. I do have a question, and I don't know who can answer it, but is there a timeline, if we're talking about policy 5517-01, bullying and other aggressive behavior towards students? We don't currently have a timeline. We're talking about 3 days. We might expand that up. I'm all for expanding it so that we can be thorough. However, I don't want to expand it in perpetuity, so, there has to be an end time. Is there an idea that there's going to be an end time, or is it going to be from 3 days to 5 days, or 3 days to 7 days?
I can't answer that right now because the administrative guidelines are right now being processed by administrative groups.
Okay.
And they're getting input from people who deal with these investigations day in and day out. And until I hear back from them, I really won't know. In most circumstances, they are done within 3 to 4 to 5 days. Sometimes you end up getting into a very complicated one. You start investigating one student, you begin talking to witnesses, all of a sudden it opens up to 3 or 4. Sometimes we start out with a bullying situation and it turns into maybe a self-harm or even into a threat, and then you have to do 2 different protocols, either a threat assessment or a self-harm protocol. So there are periods of time when this could take as long as 5 or 6 or 7 days by the time you get through all of that. But I will be able, within the next several weeks, when I get the feedback from the people who are processing this right now, I'll be able to better answer you.
Okay,
And then that will be reflected in the guidelines.
okay.
Did Mike have a?
I had keyed in on that same line, and I was kind of wondering along the same line. But I was wondering maybe if, maybe they asked for an extension or something, similar to what we do for FOIA, right? So they do have a deadline, and I don't know if it's 3 days, whatever makes sense, that deadline, but there is a deadline.
Right.
And then they would have to ask for an extension, just to keep things on schedule, right? Because, I mean, maybe that makes sense.
Okay. And then, anybody else, and I don't want to be the one asking a question.
I
Pop-
Just
yes.
want to make sure when we look at the restorative practice ones, that by eliminating any age, we're not assuming that children that are adults 18 have to have parents, because I don't believe, that gets really tricky in high school, right, when there's 18-year-olds. So, I don't disagree, but as an 18-year-old, they are an adult.
Well, aren't they also considered their legal guardian of themselves? So, like, in there, you say approved by the victim's parents or legal guardian as the age of 17 or 18, depending, you are your legal guardian.
I tried to run that by my father when I was 18, and that didn't go real well.
Yeah, I don't disagree,
think
I
it's,
just know that there's.
I know what you're saying, because it's one of those things where legally they are their own guardian.
Before the 28th, we can ask that question again, and it would not be difficult to put that pink language back in, but change the 15 to 18.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not setting
If that's what
ourselves
the
up for
board would
anything,
like to
that's
do.
all.
Right.
Okay, so we can make that change to 18, or we can get some recommendations on how that should look.
Yes.
Okay, that'd be good. I'm all for kind of tightening it down, so they have to go to their parents at least for a couple more years.
I would like to share also that it came to my attention earlier today that the policy that we started with for 144.1, Neola gives us updates, but they didn't start with our current policy, so that may look a little bit different, just to let you know, and we all kind of missed that one, so it's just one of those.
Okay.
So it's going to look a little different, not a lot, but some of the things that we were saying, I'm surprised that's not in there. It was in there, so it may not actually be in addition. I don't want to confuse things more.
That was in
Let me
there.
just tell you, it may look a little different,
Okay.
but
But we'll get a copy of that before our next meeting.
You shall.
And that's when we can have the second reading.
absolutely.
So since we're talking about the second reading, there's a motion for the first reading. Would somebody like to do that?
Move to approve the first reading of policy numbers PO, do I have to say PO? PO 144.1 compensation, 0166 agenda, 0167.3 public comment at board meetings, 5350 student suicide, 5517.01 bullying and other aggressive behavior towards students.
Is there support? Support, Amanda. Discussion? I would like to ask Vicki for policy 5350, student suicide. We have the other steps in place, the guidelines
We have
and
the-
all those.
We have the guidelines, and we have a protocol to follow during the actual investigation.
And before we have the second reading, will we have that policy available?
It's not a policy, it's an administrative guideline and a protocol.
Okay.
So I can certainly email it for you to look at. It is not what the board approves, though. Administrative guidelines are not board approved.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. two different agendas in front of me.
Do we want to talk about the conference first?
We do, and I wrote it on one,
Yeah.
I have two different agendas in front of me, so my apologies. So this is where that change was that you had requested, correct?
Yeah.
So let's, item E is reimbursement request, so why don't we go ahead, before we make those motions, talk about what you wanted to add to the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. So, the last weekend of January, the 29th through the 31st, Mary and I attended the NSBA Advocacy Institute in Washington, D.C. During this conference, we had a couple days of training, and then we went to the Capitol Hill to meet with legislators. Our work there was to talk about some very specific topics. They're available on the MASBA website, along with the OSCBA, and I'll go over some of those things too. Just to give you guys a list of who we all met with, it was a very productive day. We ran from 8 a.m. to probably 9 p.m. every single night, but we met with congressmen, I'm tired, I apologize, James, Congresswoman McLean, who is our new representative for Oxford in the U.S. House of Representatives, Congresswoman Stevens, Senator Peter and Stabenow, Congresswoman Dingell's representative, Congresswoman Tlaib, and Congresswoman Slotkin. So we were able to have sessions with all of those individuals to talk about the things that are important to public schools, including our district here in Oxford. One thing that Mary and I touched heavily on, and we also got to meet with the U.S. Department of Education. They set policies, they set grants, and they provide guidelines to schools. Mary and I, and along with the other Oakland County School District board representatives that were there, talked about free and reduced lunch expansion to all students, and how important that was, and how during COVID it was able to be done, so why couldn't it, why, right? As you saw, Governor Whitmer released her budget, and she did propose that in the Michigan legislative budget. What we were doing at Capitol Hill was federally motivated because the state of Michigan needs to receive funds from the feds to help support these programs in the long run. The other areas we touched on were Individuals with Disabilities and Education Act funding, or IDEA. The feds, 50 years ago almost, put a law that they would support 40% of the cost of pupil education and special education. Last year, Oakland County and Michigan got around 15% of that, so we're advocating for them to increase either in a stepped model or into a model in which makes sense, so there's more special education funding coming to districts, so we don't have to take money from our general funds and our general population to support these students and get them what they need. What we do know is the special education needs of students are increasing, and we need to make sure that the funding from the feds matches that at the public school level. We talked a lot about teacher shortages and how we can overcome some of that, not only just teachers, but bus drivers, food service workers, everyone that's critical infrastructure operations to our schools, and how can we create funding pipelines or grant opportunities to districts to be able to support and facilitate programs, whether through our CTE programs, which one we were introduced to, it was Educators Rising, and I know that the CTE director is looking at that. It'll be a pipeline program similar. I'm in the health services field in my real job, and HOSA is the big one that we participate in there. So this would be the equivalent, but for educators. We talked about title funding, and then most importantly, we talked about school safety, not only from an infrastructure standpoint, but to a support for mental health supports that the districts need to have on site to help overcome post-COVID, and then in our very unique case, the events of November 30th and how they've tragically affected and continue, as we saw and all felt our guts drop last night over and over again. I feel like the meetings were so productive and good, and then I do want to touch, if I can have a few more minutes. I apologize.
No,
So those were just some of the federal things that we talked about. Through the OSCBA, we'll be going out to Lansing in May, so the governor did propose her budget, and there was quite a bit of public school funding in it, which is fantastic. But as you need to remember, this is a proposed budget. So both the House and the Senate have opportunity to slice and dice it, put in their opinions. Michigan, from a standpoint of Democrats tend to favor public education, is in an okay position with that, but there's still opportunity for them to move money around. So there's a bunch of materials online that you can get from the governor's website, but most importantly, they're gonna do a 5% funding increase in the foundation allowance, which equals about $458 per pupil. What's not mapped out is what is inflation, right? So that may meet some of our inflation costs, still work to that. 5% increased funding for at-risk, ELL, rural and isolated ISD, so our first-year English learners. $80 million in total to the entire state for special education, $300 million for professional development for literacy education, $73 million for pre-K slots, which equals about 16,000 extra families that could get their kids enrolled in preschool. The $160 million towards free breakfast and lunch for every student every day, $300 million for school mental health, $318 million towards school safety, and then $300 million for tutoring, and then $300 million for infrastructure to support healthcare needs. So when we go out to the advocacy day in Lansing, we're going to continue to advocate, because around May is when the governor's office will solidify their budget, and we want to make sure we keep as much as that money towards public schools as possible, and then how that gets distributed out from the state. When we met with the Department of Education out in Washington, D.C., and we talked a lot about school safety and infrastructure costs that it takes to ensure that we have a properly built district to support the needs of all of our students, especially those of us in districts that don't have high amounts of Title I funding coming in. How could we, do that? They have the Safer Schools Community Act that came out. Michigan did receive funds for that, and we will be following the distribution process to make sure that all districts get a participant, and that's part of our conversation with them. So that's a lot, and I apologize for the fast-winded talk. But I encourage everyone, including anyone in the community, please look at the budget. Please reach out. I think Josh Shriver is our local representative here in Oxford for our district, to make sure that he's aware that how important this funding is, to keep it in this space and to try not to vote against it. Questions?
I want to, yeah, I got a question. You missed the most impressive stat that you told me when we ran into each other, which made everybody in Washington, D.C.'s ears perk up, about students that go through a trauma in high school, their per yearly earnings drop by.
Over their lifetime, studies out of previous institutions show that per year earning over your lifetime is significantly decreased when you experience a trauma such as what we have. And so there's an economic benefit to the federal government investing in our schools, because the outcome is 10, 15 years from now on our total economy. And that's what, in honesty, senators and legislators up at the federal level, they're very interested in knowing what we hear, Mary? What's the case, the business case for this, for the economy? And it feels insensitive to talk about it that way. I recognize that, but these are facts that we know, and we need to protect our students and get them the resources they need so they can be successful contributors to our civic economy.
And if those are the conversations that we need to have, so that they understand that it's going to affect the bottom line or the business case study, then those are the conversations that we need to have, as uncomfortable as they may be.
And this is why we need our legislators, our representatives to know and to give them the information that they need to go back and stand up for public schools, because they don't know what they don't know. They have some advisors. But when they hear from us, when they hear from individual citizens, when you're making phone calls, they actually do keep track of their phone calls. I mean, it's important for them to know that public schools are supported and the resources that we need.
Yeah, we did invite our new congresswoman to come and check out Oxford. We will do the same when we go to Lansing and invite those legislators out. I think it's important for them to see our communities that they've been elected to represent, and to understand the needs that each individual community they represent has. And we are one of their communities.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you both.
Thank you very much for going, taking your personal time to go, and thank you very
Yes.
much.
So with that, there are 2 recommendations for action. You want to read the first one?
I can read them both if you want.
Yeah, read them both, please.
Move to approve the reimbursement request by Treasurer Mary Hanser for the total expenses of $754.74 paid to attend the NSBA conference in Washington, D.C., January 29th to the 31st of 2023.
Is there support? James, any discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move-
Opposed?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion carries.
Move to approve the reimbursement request by Secretary Aaron Reese for the total expenses of $1,199.03 paid to attend the NSBA conference in Washington, D.C., January 29th to the 31st, 2023.
Support? Support James. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Just as a question, that comes out of our training budget, correct? Our board training budget? So keep in mind, this is not general fund dollars. These are money that's set aside for the school board members to take classes, take courses, whether it be through MASB, whether it be through something like this. So that's, we want to be mindful that's not coming out of classroom dollars.
And that is advocacy efforts as well as professional development. You know, we support professional development for our staff, and I appreciate the support for professional development for board members too. Thank you.
And thank you. It was an absolute honor and privilege to represent Oxford in those venues that weekend. It was also my birthday weekend, so it's a good way to spend it.
26?
Yeah, 26 forever.
Yep. Okay. Item number 8, curriculum and instruction. Jordan, you got the mic again.
Hello?
There we go.
All right, there we go. Well, let's open up a new presentation. I know you guys are probably getting sick of me, but here I am again, asking for your support once more. So I am here to present some curriculum options that we would like to offer at Oxford Virtual Academy for the following school year. So we are seeking board approval to add the following curriculum to our course catalog. You have an extensive board packet with a lot of that information, Common Core, standards alignment, scope and sequence. I'll speak to that a bit more. But we are looking to add Blackbird, which is an ELA curriculum for grades K through 8. And we are looking to add Know-Yo Charter, which is a science curriculum for grades 1 through 3. So both of these curriculum options we plan to implement in a hybrid setting. Of course, they would be open to any student who chooses to do so, but the need is for hybrid at this current time. So the reason for the addition for Blackbird, our hybrid program started 5 years ago. It started with 254 students. It is currently up to 650 full-time students at Oxford Virtual Academy. When that program started, we had an MOU with a company called Inquisicorp, and they are the producers of the Bookshark ELA curriculum. So back then, we took their ELA curriculum and we designed it to be used in a hybrid format, and we built an online component. So a few years later, that company has decided to create their own virtual product, and in doing so, they are choosing to end our memorandum of understanding, and so as of currently, we can use their intellectual property, and we can use it in our hybrid format. They are choosing to end that agreement with us, and from now on, if we want to use their intellectual property, we would have to go through their virtual component. After investigating it and going through it, it's not something that we want to move forward with. So now we have this hole in our ELA curriculum for our hybrid settings, and we need to fill that hole. And so we took some time to go through Blackbird. We had a team look through it, and it is phenomenal. It's a lot more balanced. It's very robust. It's easy to use. And that ease of use is very important because, again, when you join OVA, number one, especially if you join a hybrid location at OVA, not only are we partnering with a site that's going to offer 2 days of learning, so you're learning in person, you're learning online, we're also partnering with parents. Parents are an important piece of the educational process. So it needs to be flexible, it needs to be easy to use. And so there's a good balance between reading and writing. Something you'll notice about traditional homeschool curriculum, we see like Saxon grammar and writing, which is very heavy in grammar and writing. We see all about reading, which is very heavy in reading. I know, amazing. But this is a more well-rounded, more well-balanced, more in alignment with what we're seeking. So there is one of the bonuses that it's strong in nonfiction units. So one of the other things we've noticed when going through curriculum, there's quite a few nonfiction Common Core standards, but a lot of the curriculum options that we've looked through in the past, that's been very lacking. It's been very fiction-oriented, very going through literature. Not a lot of writing added to it, and not a lot of science-based informational writing. So there is a strong presence of graphic organizers and manipulatives, again, for that flexibility in use. And it is used in other hybrid schools around the nation. So the representative that we have talked to actually has her own hybrid school in Kentucky. And so it's designed to be used in this type of format. And then the other benefit, it is well known in the homeschool community. And that is, I don't want to like gloss over that. That's very important. When we partner with our demographic, one of the first questions I get, I've been at OVA for 5 years now, they care very much about what you are teaching to their child. Hey, I would like to register at OVA. What are you teaching my child? Number one, because they care. But number two, because we're partnering with parents. When you partner with a parent, they are also part of the implementation of that curriculum. So number one, I want to know what you're teaching to my child. I want to look through it myself. And then number two, I'm your counterpart. I'm also giving that curriculum to my child. I'm a part of that process, so I especially want to know. The reason why I am talking to you about curriculum for next year in February is because open enrollment starts in March at OVA. So number one, students are starting to register for courses, but then also we enter into agreements with our hybrid locations starting in March. And so kind of everything starts in March, and so we need to be able to answer parents when they ask us, what are you teaching my child next year? What am I signing up for? We need to be able to give a solid response. Yes, this is the curriculum that your child will be using. This is what we will be teaching, and you are also a part to play in that. So we are asking now so that we're hoping for this to be voted on the February 28th board meeting. We have samples of all the curriculum, so we gave you guys like the scope and sequence, the standards alignment, the literature. However, we have, upon request, if you need it, we can make the curriculum available for viewing as well. Then we also have, so here's some samples of the materials. Again, a lot of graphic organizers, a lot of using manipulatives, such as like a story maker. So how are we going to get story starters for our children to engage in the writing process a little more than they currently do? And again, how can we use like modern, captivating literature to increase engagement for our students? And then the second curriculum we are seeking to implement is NOEO charters. It is a science curriculum. So a little bit about science at OVA. Number one, proudly, we spend more time on science than probably any elementary school, any public elementary school in the state of Michigan. We do a lot of hands-on science. We do a lot with the NGSS. Our kids get a lot of science. And part of that is we also do something a little bit differently. The NGSS, when it first came out, it didn't really assign specific standards to grade levels. And so what we've done at OVA is we actually cycle through standards. So there are going to be chemistry standards for elementary. So again, solids, liquids, gases. There are going to be physics standards at the elementary level, light, sound, motion, and then of course biology standards. And so at a lot of schools you'll see, like grade 2 will have a mix of all these three. What we do at OVA is we cycle. So we'll have a physics year, elementary physics, where we focus on teaching those elementary physics standards for an entire year. Then we'll cycle into the chemistry standards, we'll cycle into the earth science standards, and we'll cycle into the biology standards. It gives us the ability to have a lot of multi-age classrooms. Again, we partner with a lot of families. Families often have more than one child. That tends to be a thing. And so it allows us to have multi-age classrooms, that cross-cohort collaboration, but then it allows us to partner with families so we can have children who are in the same family having conversations about earth science at the same time together. Or when we partner with a parent, maybe if they have a first and a second grader, typically we do like a first, second grade split, a third, fourth grade split, and then we'll have like a 5-6 split. It allows them to conduct a science experiment so siblings in that family can do the science experiment together. And so we cycle through, we hit the NGSS, but we cycle through. So we're requesting this because we currently use elemental science. And elemental science has been good. It's our 4th year using it, but what we've noticed is, especially at the younger grades, grades 1 and 2, especially, some of the experiments have been a little tedious. Some of the vocabulary has had to be customized quite heavily, and we're seeking to get a curriculum that, in the spirit of improvement and the spirit of progress, we're hoping to explore and use a curriculum that may give us a more engaging science approach for our younger kiddos. It's just easier to read, easier to manipulate. Sometimes we've had some unsuccessful science experiments. We're hoping to increase the success rate of the science experiments for our dear 7 and 8-year-olds, and hoping to continue to keep that that excitement and that energy for science, vigorously alive and growing for our elementary kids. So here are some of the materials. Again, we also have these materials on hand. In your board packet, you'll see the literature, the topics, the scope and sequence, the Common Core alignment. And again, if you would like to look through these materials, we have them available as well. Any questions? Yes.
Mary?
Unless somebody else wants to.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, again, Jordan. So it looks like we lost a vendor and then we're dropping a vendor. Are the MOUs, are they like how long, do those have start and stop times? Are those annual renewals?
So our MOU with Bookshark is not an annual renewal. We've simply received notice from that company that they are going to end the MOU at the conclusion of this school year. So okay. I think around July 1st, we'll get official notice that our MOU is going to cease. And then once that happens, we can still utilize Bookshark in a purely virtual format. But again, for those 650 hybrid kiddos, it's not going to be a viable option anymore. So we need a replacement.
Now with the other one, we have found that with the science curriculum, right?
Yeah.
So what you found is that you found something better, basically, right? So are we able to just cease our agreement with them? I'm just curious how that part of it works.
So no, we'll continue to utilize. We don't have a formal agreement with Elemental Science the same way that we have a formal agreement with Bookshark. So if you look at like ELA, for example, we have probably 4 or 5, actually, no, we have 6 ELA options at the elementary level. 4 of those can be used in a hybrid format. Right now, we only have one science option, and that's elemental science. So we're just trying to expand upon that. We have 8 hybrid locations, and so each hybrid location has its own culture, its own approach, its own flair, and so just trying to make sure that we're meeting their needs and responding to those needs, because again, we're a school of choice. And so people have to choose to come to OVA, and making sure when we get feedback, hey, the elemental science curriculum at, you know, 1st and 2nd grade, it hasn't been really going well for me, and we're a little bit frustrated. Making sure that we're responding to that feedback and that, you know, we're actively addressing it is something that, as a school of choice, we need to do in order to, again, maintain a quality product and a quality relationship with their families.
And all of this back to how you're able to work with each student, where they're at. And so we have this many choices, and you manage all of this, you and the team manage all of this. Okay, thank you for that. Now, when starting the new, with the new group, starting with the Blackbird, is there a lot of professional development that has to be done around that?
Yeah, so with Blackbird, the first thing we'll need to do is, again, we are a 5OD school. So what we need to do is, whenever we utilize a new hybrid curriculum, we have to then create an online component to accompany that that meets 5OD requirements, to make sure that those students have they are doing a distance learning, but they also have, in the pupil accounting manual, it will say that the majority of an online course must be delivered in a virtual setting. So making sure that we are building something to accompany that, but then also, yes, we do need to sit down with our teachers. This curriculum currently is being slotted to be used at our Rochester location, in our Oxford location at Lake Point. So sitting down with those teachers, going through it and understanding what it means to teach this curriculum and how to do it in the best way. Also, our hybrid locations will do orientations in the summertime, where parents will come in, and that's when they'll also take the opportunity to talk about the curriculum with parents.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
Anybody else have a question? Okay, thank you, Jordan.
Thank you. This is the last you'll see of me up here, hopefully.
Okay, item number 9, business and operations. Mr. Barna, we have the 2022-2023 First Amendment General Budget Review. All of you finance team, get ready.
Good evening, everyone. This is what you were waiting for, I know. Good evening. There we go. I know all of you in your board pack have this 11 by 17 document on my spreadsheet here, a summary spreadsheet that I'm pulling up on the screen right now. And so this is obviously what we're going to be going through right here. We're going to start off with, this is our first amended budget for this school year, current school year. As a reminder to those in the audience that are paying attention, and our new board members as well, that don't have the experience of looking at potentially a revised budget on an annual basis. When I do an original budget, which happens around the April, May, and I bring it to the first June board meeting, that work is obviously completed around that time frame. So when you look at the blue column here, that was the original budget for this year that was created, again, almost a year ago. And so I just want to be very clear about that. Now, when you're looking at the spreadsheet on your screen and on the paper here, the yellow is the first amended budget for this school year. So that's why I have the 2 highlighted columns for comparison's sake. And I start out, obviously, with our revenue component, and I break down, just like I do expenses, just by your function level. So it's a summary level, and so there is approximately, just so you are all well aware, not just revenue, but expenses, there's about 4,000, approximately 5,000, 4,500, I should say, accounts that are behind the scenes that you don't see here. And so in local revenue, as an example, you may have 30 accounts that represent local revenue. And so what I did for you is, especially for the newer board members, I provided a key on the far left that is on your spreadsheet as well, obviously, which kind of just gives you a very high-level breakdown of not only revenue and what are the large items that make up each of those functions within revenue, but also functions within expenses. Just so that you can say, okay, well, Sam's saying that we're going up $1 million in the central expenses. Why are we doing that? Just as an example. And so you could look down and you can see, oh, in central, it's technology, it's HR, it's marketing, so on and so forth. So just wanted to be very clear on that. So if we go back up to revenue and we look at, the differences between my original budget that I created as well as the first amended in yellow, we're up about $101,000. And again, local revenue is made up primarily of our 18 mills that we levy on non-homestead properties, and so it's property taxes is the majority of what that makes up. So that's increased slightly versus my first estimate. State revenue is obviously just huge, and that again has gone up about 9%, and really the large factor and the contributing factor, I should say, for that increase is, it's called the 11W funding, and it was because of our tragedy. And so the state agreed to give Oxford schools approximately $9.9 million last summer. So we received it in 2 installments, I believe it was, over July and August. The caveat is that $9.9 million is going to be offset by a revenue decrease this year because of the loss of teaching time that we experienced immediately after the tragedy. I believe we were out of school for between 5 and 6 weeks, and so the state is going to be taking away approximately $3.3 million this year. And so I'm bringing that up because that $3.3 million decrease in funding is included in my new estimate, but so is the $6.6 million difference. So it's basically $6.6 million approximately of new money that I didn't originally budget this year, and that's why you see that variance.
So, Sam, just to be clear,
Mhm.
they're giving us 9.9, but because we weren't present, they're taking away 3.3, so we're still up 6.6.
Correct, yes. And so you could think of that 3.3 as a pass-through.
Okay.
So, the federal revenue, as you can see, is down slightly. Federal revenue is everything we've talked about before. It's, our IDA funds. It's obviously our Title I through Title IV. So we're receiving all of those funds in that component. So it's down slightly. At least my estimate is down slightly. And then our other revenue, and our other revenue is made up of a bunch of different sources. One of the big key driver here was our Lighthouse Academy that we authorize. We're the authorizer. And so we get a 3% fee for being the authorizer of that Lighthouse Academy charter. And that their FTE has just really gone up. And so because of that fact, because their revenue has increased so dramatically, we actually are getting obviously about $200,000 more than I originally estimated from last summer this year. So that's a plus for us, obviously. So overall, our grand total revenue has gone up $6.6 million approximately, or 8%. Moving along to our expense side of the equation, again, if you want to know what's kind of the high-level items that are within those big functions, please refer down to your legend that I have in the bottom, or feel free to ask me. There's a potential that I would be correct in answering you very quickly, but I did create that legend, so these are still valid explanations of what's in that. Bless you. So the first one is our added needs, and so we have 5 new staff members this year, resource room teachers, and then 1 special education para. As you can see, so that's a 5% increase, and that may not be the entire increase. So, what's behind all of these expenses, as I did not put on this sheet, but it was assumed, is that we settled all of our bargaining unit contracts last year for 3 years. So what I have included in these expenses are the year-over-year increases in salaries because of those bargaining unit contracts. And so I could have been off a little bit, I could have been a little bit shy in terms of not factoring enough money, or I could have been grossly over, as an example. So I just want you to be aware that's what's included in these numbers. And approximately 80% of our expenses are salary and benefits, so out of all of these expenses. So please keep that in mind.
Sam, real quick.
Yes.
Does that number include salary benefits, MIPSers?
It does.
MIPSers contributions, all those?
That's correct. Yes, it
All
does.
right, thank you.
So, you know, I had a fantastic question asked of me the last couple of days. It's fantastic because it's very detailed, and I like that. And it was, for every dollar that we spend on salaries, what percentage do we spend on benefits? And it varies because it depends on when our employees have started with in public schools. But on average, you could say approximately 52%. So for every dollar, we're spending $1.52 if you include benefits. And that excludes health insurance. So it's even higher than that when you include health insurance. And again, it depends on if you're single or married. So I just want to be very clear that when you look at a dollar in wages, it's so much more. So that's why these numbers are what they are. And of course, we're not unique. I mean, every district is like this in the state of Michigan and across the country, I'm sure. So if we go to athletics, you can see, you know, my original estimate, 1.244 million. Seen that going up. We had coaching wage increases for this year that we again, you know, we didn't have last year. We have new uniforms and new equipment across the board. And so that's why you see that higher this year, my estimate. We have basic programs, obviously the largest expense component within our general fund budget. And that was primarily driven by 8 new instructional staff members. And so again, fully loaded with, you know, benefits as well. And then we had some decreases, you know, in business. You know, I originally estimated my business services department to have a little over $1 million to spend. I adjusted it slightly down. Some expenses that I didn't see coming through this year. Also, Central, I have expenses there that have decreased by about 4%. So I'm not going to read you, I'm sorry, I'm doing that right now, but I want to really hit the high-level notes. And so the other one is obviously our general administration expenses. And, you know, out of that amount of money, really I put the third-party review and legal services. That's the primary driver to the increase there. But I just wanted to be very clear of what that is, because in total, you know, I originally estimated about 1.2 million, and so I've increased that. That third-party review and the legal services aren't the only explanation, but I think they're the largest explanation for that. In addition to that, we can see here that we have the other, which is a small dollar amount, but we hired a new theater assistant within the other total, and we increased the budget for new equipment and supplies for our theater, our PAC. If you go a little bit further down, you see that we had a 25% increase in our pupil expenditure category. And as you can see here, very, you know, fair level of detail there as to why it's up so dramatically. And as you can see, it really is the staff that we hired. And we hired quite a variety of staff, ranging from counselors and psychologists and our new recovery coordinator this year, 3 family school liaisons, a social worker, and student support specialist, and obviously our fantastic executive director of wellness as well. So those are all new positions which obviously aided in that variance. So all in all, when you come down to expenses, they've increased slightly more, or slightly less I should say, than our revenue. And so my original estimate for a revenue over expenses for this year was $305,000. I am now estimating that it will be $644,000. And I decided to maybe shift some dollars to our capital project fund, and as opposed to $200,000, I said $500, but still adding $144,000 to our general fund balance. And even though I don't have it on here, I just want to remind everyone that our general fund balance is approximately $14.3 million, 14.275, as of the audited financials from last year. So you could just take that 14.275 theoretically and add my estimate here of another 144 to get your new general fund balance. In terms of the capital project fund, that's a separate fund, as you know, that is solely funded from the general fund, any excesses, and I believe that, that balance right now is approximately $5.5 million. So this would add another $500,000 to that general fund balance, or I should say that capital project fund balance. So, is there any questions that you have for me that I maybe went over too quickly?
Sam, I have a quick question.
Yes.
The capital project fund, can that money be shifted over to the general fund?
Yes, it can.
Or is there, okay. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that there wasn't a tie to it based on if it comes into one fund. You know, how sometimes if
Yes.
it's,
So
if it goes into one fund, you have to account for it on another.
Yeah. So because the board, based upon me coming to the board and doing a final amended budget and an original budget, anytime you do that and we are theoretically moving between these funds, this would have to be something approved by the board.
Okay.
So let's just assume that we wanted to move, let's just say $3 million from our capital project fund back to what funded the capital project fund, which is the general fund. The board would have to take action on that. Okay? Great question.
Anybody else have a question for Sam? There were a lot of great questions that came over during the week.
They were very good questions.
Yep. So.
I love that.
And you were able to communicate.
Yeah, and
Very
I
good.
really appreciate the questions. It shows me that you care and you're paying attention, so I appreciate
I
that.
appreciate that you answered and then followed up with what that meant, because sometimes those
I
are
get it. You know, some of this is not that intuitive when
Yeah,
you're
a
not
lot of
looking at it every day.
information not in that field.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
very good questions as well.
Thank you.
So,
So one of the things that I want to point out, and you may already know this, for the new board members, that it does seem kind of strange that we got $9.6 million, I think it was, from the state.
9.9, yeah.
9.9,
Approximately.
and then they took money back. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but one of the mechanisms for that happening was they knew that we needed funds,
Mhm.
and they gave us the money, and then both sides of the aisle came up with new funding, and it was hey, you need the money now, but we don't have time to vote on it, just get it to you,
Mhm.
and then once we have a vote on what we're gonna do with, and it wasn't just for Oxford, there was a lot of things that were happening, but since we didn't hit our per 170 days that we're required to, they took that money back because we didn't have that 170 days. They could have waited to see what we're gonna do, and then just say, take the money out of your general fund, and then if we decide that we're gonna give you the money, we'll give you the money. But they didn't wanna do that. They wanted to give us the money, and there was an understanding that we probably were gonna lose some of that money.
Yeah.
Is that a correct statement?
It's a correct statement. I mean, we knew that, you know, we had heard talks that they were going to take away the funds. And as of today, you know, we get paid once a month by the state, and we get what's called a, you know, foundation allowance. It's a report that shows the breakdown of how much they're giving us and for what. So it's not only our foundation allowance, but it's also our state aid status report that also tells us how much categoricals we're receiving on a monthly basis. And so as of January, we get this report just before it comes out, just before we get the money transferred over. We get it around the third week of each month. And so we should be looking for it, honestly, within the next few days. And I'm anticipating seeing a reduction in our state aid because of what I just mentioned. But as of last month, January, we have not received any reduction from our revenue because of that.
Don't say that too loud, maybe they forgot.
Hopefully they're not listening. But no, but we anticipate it. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Any further questions for Sam? No? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Sam. Okay. Unscheduled audience participation. Let's, thank you. You guys wanna take like a 2-minute, no, just go? And I just wanna make sure I can read them before I get to. Yep, all right. Angela Halleck. Yeah, that's fine. right on the bottom.
No.
Working?
There we go.
All right. You'll have to go back to January 24th, the school board meeting where I was cut off. I was at 2 hours and 37-minute marker. After I was cut off, I was asked to continue speaking and to answer more questions. That didn't happen. So per the November 22nd school board meeting, there were 62 staff members that are trained in behavior threat assessment. So you're telling the community 1 year post-tragedy that there was only 62 trained out of 400 teachers, and that's not even including all the staff members. Every single member needs to be trained for this BTAM. It takes one professional day to be trained. So our teachers are being pulled for all sorts of IB training, which is $12,000 a month to hold this title. And I quote, IB nurtures and develops young students as caring, active participants in a lifelong journey of learning. We pay $12,000 a month to teach caring, a journey of learning. I'll get to that shortly. If you take, for example, just the weeks of September 19th through October 7th, 2022, the teacher was out of the classroom for a meeting 4 times. So we can pull a teacher from academic instruction to learn about caring, but we can't train them all in threat assessment. Now insert my speech from January 24th. Social emotional learning. 30 minutes every week, 2 hours a month, not spent on learning math or reading. Additionally, we now have WIN time, which stands for What I Need time. This is to allow students who qualify for services to obtain them. This is another 30 minutes daily, no math or reading instruction. I asked in September to have my child receive these services for 5th grade math. The principal pulled his state test scores from 4th grade, which showed he was above average. Therefore, he doesn't qualify for help. The principal also stated that WIN time is for children who are 2 grade levels behind. What? Who waits for their child to be 2 grade levels behind? Better yet, Oxford, why are we waiting so long to get these kids help? Oh, that's right. We're more concerned about the feelings. All right, back to the WIN time. 30 minutes every day, 2.5 hours a week, 10 hours a month. Plus the 2 hours for SEL, so we're at 12 hours a month without academic instruction. So it will not be a surprise that according to the NICHE report on Oxford schools, that out of our approximately 5,792 Oxford students take state test scores, only 51% are proficient in math and 63% in reading. To go back to the SEL committee that you have now created, I'll be back.
Katie Hill. Mark that one.
I don't have a lot of prepared comments. I would just like to thank the school board, the administration, and the entire Oxford Community Schools community and staff for your commitment to social emotional learning. All of our students need social emotional learning. We just had an issue at Leonard Elementary not too long ago. Every parent wants to think we've got it under control, but we are not at home with 30 kids or a school full of kids with our child and how they are learning to interact with them and learning to interact in society. And again, we all know that our kids need these skills. We're reminded of it all too often when we see tragedies. I love WIN time. My child loves WIN time, and he is not behind grade level in any subject. But it's a great opportunity for the kids to explore opportunities in their education that sparks their curiosity, even at a very young age. And it also greatly concerns me as we talk about safety and security. when these parents opt their children out of SEL, who the heck is coming in and teaching reading and math or whatever they say it is? Are these people screened? Have they gone through background checks? You know, what are they teaching? Is that school approved? Because they're coming into the building with our students. And, you know, that makes me uncomfortable that someone can just yank their child out of instruction in our district and have who knows who coming in and teaching who knows what to a group of students that my child is under the roof, same roof with. Again, I didn't have a lot prepared, but I do want to thank all of you for your commitment to social emotional learning, making it ingrained in our curriculum, and making it a cornerstone of our recovery plan. And when you opt out of social emotional learning, you're opting out of Oxford's recovery. Yes, thank you.
Shirley Tomzak. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Yep. Oh,
She's a former Oxford teacher.
I don't want to spend a lot of time going on my background, but those of you who are new, I've been a part of this district for more than 50 years as a teacher, parent, grandparent, high school counselor. I have a lot of feeling for education and for Oxford schools. And I also will be back because anybody who reads about brain research or how children learn knows that they don't learn just by sitting down and memorizing multiplication tables or spelling words. And social emotional learning is pervasive in the school. I mean, if you raise your hand, you know that you're not supposed to push someone else. You can't separate social emotional learning from being a human being. And it can be developmentally taught, and I think part of the problem we're facing today with all the tragedies is because many adults are not socially and emotionally prepared to live in a civilized society. So I too want to commend the board and all the teachers who, from what I've heard, seem to love the social emotional learning part. And we need to carry on with it. And I have some books that I will bring the next time. Brain research over the past 20 years has shown us so much about how children learn. And they don't learn just by sitting down and memorizing and rote learning. That is not education for a civilized democratic society. So I too will be back.
thank you. Brian Cooper.
Hello. Do you need me to hold it up?
Yeah, please.
Okay, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Probably will be scattered, and I apologize. Last night, like I think for everybody, it really shook me. And I want to acknowledge, and I think it's so important, and I'm glad we did through the emails, and I hope the communication went out to the students to acknowledge what happened and the impact that it has on them, because I think it's so overwhelming. And to think about them having to show back up in the building the next day after that is a lot of trauma for them. So I want to let the students know that I see them, and I hope that we see them as well, and we acknowledge that. The reason why I should have been here a couple meetings ago is because I stumbled upon a community-based post that acknowledged concerns regarding bullying. And I feel that some of the conversation that was had today, I would assume that some of the people on the board have to see the emails that come about through the community. Not that you have to take everything on Facebook as a certain fact, but the fact of the matter is that consistently I've heard about the behaviors at the middle school, and I have a middle schooler there, and I worry about it. The reason why I worry about it is because if you're following along with what's going on in the world today, you know that there's a significant level of depression in the children and an increase in suicide risk. CDC put one out recently. I know that's a controversial group nowadays, but the fact is that it showed that in one group that was really important, and that was recognizing the behavior, the feelings that the girls were having. 50% of the high school girls felt persistently sad, hopeless in 2021, with a 60% increase in the highest level reported over the past decade. They also went on to say that 30% of girls seriously considered attempting suicide, a nearly 60% increase from a decade ago. The bullying at school, from what I understand, the behaviors and the comments that parents say about how that the kids are just trying to put their head down and get through it. I don't think that's okay, and that's not a way that I want it to be for our students, not just my kids, all students. And some of the things that were on that post were very worrisome in regard to touching, catcalling, inappropriate, just out loud behaviors, physical fights. And if you think about that young girl that just killed herself, that was 14-year-old, after that video got released, I know that we also had a video released that was out and about of a student that was assaulted in middle school. And I can't bear to not get up here and say something regarding what happens with that, because I can't lose one of our students to something like that. So I'm begging and pleading, and I feel confident, and I see Dr. Markovich more as a doer here. And unfortunately, I know that our doing is 4 months before it's done. And I hope it's not done in a roundabout way of preparing the next person to take over that role. But I'm really hopeful that we can kind of foster a relationship with the parents, because that hasn't happened in the 15 months since the shooting. And we need to have parent involvement at the middle school and elementary level. And the parents also need to be aware of their behaviors, because they speak disrespectfully at times to the staff, and which is a reflection in the students that come to the school.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Amy Lambert.
Let me turn this on.
Please.
Please.
Oh, sorry. You're out. I didn't mean to do that.
Should have been on, so.
Should have been on already. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It should turn red.
Okay, it's on.
Yep.
There you go.
So I'm sure you guys are aware, as part of the board, on the email that we got in regards to Clear Lake threat just yesterday, just the other day. What I'm not so sure that you're aware of is that this is the child's third offense. Last year, there were 2 accounts of bullying that this kid had, not just verbally, but physically. And I can see that happens in the middle school, but starting in elementary, for me, it's way too young. There's action that needs to be taken. Both the parents of these 2 individuals that were bullied last year went to the principals. There were behavior modifications that possibly could have taken effect. I don't know what the steps are, but obviously it didn't do anything. So going from verbally to physically and now to make actual threats to people, it has progressed. The Oakland County as well as Oxford have made a pledge to this community to keep us safe. My child doesn't feel safe. He doesn't want to go to school if this kid's there. 2-day suspension for his offense is not enough. For me, he needs to be removed from that school. As a mother, I need my child to feel safe. And the actions or lack of action by the school need to be addressed.
Andrea Hamilton.
Good evening. Is this working? Can't tell from over here. Well, first of all, I want to say my heart goes out to all the Oxford alumni at MSU and all the families and our entire community that was re-triggered last night. I had a different idea of what I was going to come up here and talk about, but I stayed up late. And now I'm walking kind of in a fog like the rest of us, probably. Originally, I wanted to come up and congratulate Mary on your reelection, and James and Amanda and Mike on being up here. And you know, I'd like to be up there with you, of course, but I continue my work meeting weekly or bi-weekly with staff and students and parents in the community. And we talk about things that we are concerned about, changes that, you know, we'd like to support, and ways that we can support, you know, a lot of things that are going right. And a lot of times we have public comments that are negative. I wanted to bring a little positivity to the night, and just like others, interject my appreciation for the SEL programs. And I know a couple of you up there have the ears of a big chunk of our community that doesn't believe or buy into or has this cultural war, different idea of what SEL is, and you have their ears. So I hope that you fulfill your, you know, obligations to support our public schools and correct the reality of what it really is. I appreciated last board meeting how there was a wonderful presentation on it tonight, a little bit about OVA and their integration on LCL programs. I think that awareness is really important for parents. And you know, professionally, I did a prevention program in schools in the Pierre County for a while, and just wished that the grant that I was working with covered entire classrooms, and now we're doing it here in Oxford. It's amazing, because the kids that I pulled to teach anger management or social skills, they would still go back to a classroom, and other kids didn't know how to interact with them, and they didn't know how to integrate themselves back into that classroom, and now we're doing it. And last year and last night, we see why it's so important. We need our kids to be able to talk about their feelings. My little guy in Clear Lake comes home, and he is an excitable, happy little child, and sometimes he needs a little help calming down just from being happy, and he's doing it and practicing the skills he learned from his classroom. And so thank you to all those teachers, and I know the middle school teachers who do it themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Meg Buckley.
Good evening. My name is Meg Buckley. I'm here tonight as a parent of a student in special education. My freshman has had an individualized education plan in place since 3rd grade. When his teacher noticed he was struggling, testing was done, meetings were had, and a plan was set in motion. Over the next couple of years, that plan has changed and grew as his needs changed and grew. All without any pushback or problems. His caseload was a rock star. The elementary team was a huge help. Then middle school came, we had a lot of growing pains that turned into battles. A fight to remove foreign language that frankly should have not happened. Meeting after meeting where I had to get the higher ups involved to get things taken care of. Meeting after meeting where I was in tears because it's overwhelming and frustrating to see your child struggling, and getting pushback for advocating for him. Today it reached a boiling point, and I had to demand he be removed from his caseload for his own mental health and well-being. Another rock star stepped in and helped him finish his year. 8th grade was by far our best year. His caseload truly cared and helped him so much. I'm extremely grateful for her. Social work helped him learn to advocate for himself, and I watched him grow. This year, all I can say is I've never wanted to move my kids out of this district more so than right now. Freshman year has been a nightmare, from a schedule that was not meant for a student with his accommodations, to having to have multiple meetings already by November to try and fix things. One of those meetings, we found out that he had been advocating about being bullied with nothing being done and us not being notified, to the point it escalated in him being assaulted by that bully in a classroom and us finding out right before the meeting from his trusted adult. Again, I'm grateful for her. Again, his IEP had to be adjusted because the system was not working for him, because accommodations were not being met. I watched my child go from confident and advocating for himself to asking why he should bother when nobody listens or helps. To which I reply, me too, bud, me too. His caseload is not in any of his classes, and from my understanding, isn't always available to check in. What's the point? Something has to change in our district to help these students. Something has to change where parents feel comfortable speaking out without the fear of retaliation, because let me tell you, that fear of retaliation has stopped me more than I wish to admit. I'm terrified standing here. But I am the parent standing in front of you, willing to take whatever comes from me speaking out to make sure what's happening to my child doesn't happen to anyone else's, to raise awareness that they are not alone. I don't know what needs to change. The helpers, the rock stars, and the allies are leaving the district. The system is broken, and it's failing our kids who shouldn't be slipping through the cracks. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of my child. I hope this truly helps. I truly hope this time I'm heard. I truly hope that this changes can be made and the system can be fixed before it's too late, before my child is truly failed as are others.
Jennifer Hart.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Hart. I have 3 children, one at Daniel Axford, another at OELC, and a younger one that will be starting at OELC next year. I had planned to come up tonight to speak in support of the district's work and effort on social emotional learning. I had planned to talk about how all learning is social emotional learning, because learning does not happen in a vacuum. However, after last night, I decided that I was going to speak more personally. My oldest was in 1st grade last year during the shooting at the high school. He knows, like all of his classmates and the majority of students across the district, what happened at the high school on November 30th. Earlier this month, they held a lockdown drill at his school. This time, he asked me, what if what happened at the big kids' school happens again? What if it happens at my school? I was a little caught off guard, but I tried to tell him that the teachers and his principal and everyone at his school works very hard to make sure that it doesn't, and that if it does happen, they work very hard to keep him safe, and that it's okay to feel scared, and that's why we practice, so even if we're scared, we know what to do. See, for my son who is in the 2nd grade, these lockdown drills are for an event that they know all too well is real and can happen where they live. Our children in Oxford are living and learning in a world where gun violence is not just something on the news, it's something that happened to them, to their classmates, to their neighbors, and to their community. So thank you. Thank you for focusing on SEL as part of our recovery effort and as part of making our school community safer in many ways for my kids and for their peers. Thank you for providing a safe and welcoming space at school where he can talk about how it's okay to feel scared and angry and hurt and happy and jealous and sad. Thank you for helping him to learn how to handle those emotions and cope with them and be empathetic to others' emotions. Because while we do talk about our emotions at home and how to manage them, school is where he is often experiencing all these feelings and needing to put those skills into action without me there to help him. So thank you for helping him. Thank you for giving all the students in the district the skills that will help them build a safer, more welcoming, more caring community. Thank you for helping our children navigate this sometimes confusing and scary world. Right now, it is all too obvious that our children do not and cannot leave their emotions at home when they go to school. And those emotions can be heartbreaking because often that emotion is fear. Thank you.
Kara Collette?
Hello. So I am speaking to you today as a mother from a high school student, a community member, a veteran, and former auxiliary police officer to bring attention to the urgent need for stronger gun laws in our country. 2 tragic events have occurred that touched our community in less than 2 years apart that highlight the devastating consequences of our current lenient gun laws. On November 30th, the Oxford High School shooting in Michigan claimed the lives of 4 of our students and left many injured. And then yesterday at MSU, that resulted in 3 children being killed and more injured. These senseless acts of violence remind us of the urgent need for changes to our laws, gun laws in our country. We cannot continue to allow these tragedies to occur without taking action to prevent them. It is time for us to take a stand and demand that our lawmakers prioritize public safety over the interests of gun lobbies. I urge the Board of Education, you sitting in front of me, to take a strong stance in support of the gun law reform. We need to demand that our elected officials take immediate action to enact common sense measures, such as universal background checks, red flag laws, and assault weapon bans. We need to ensure that guns do not fall into the wrong hands and that those who are at risk of committing violence are identified and prevented from doing so. We need to create a culture of safety in our communities, our schools, and our universities. We cannot afford to wait any longer to take action. I implore the Board of Education to use its influence and its voice to speak out in support of these gun law reform. And I'm asking the community at large to join us at Lansing tomorrow, Wednesday, February 15th at 11 o'clock on the east steps of the Capitol building to make our voices heard for our elected officials. We cannot allow these tragedies to become the norm in our country. We must take action to prevent them from happening again. Thank you.
Okay, we have a list of scheduled activities, winter break, and then we have a list of our board meetings, and then spring break, which would be March 27th through the 31st. And then the remainder of the school fiscal year, I would say, of our board meetings. Any administrative clarification?
I have none.
None? Any final board comments? Anybody? Mary?
I do want to thank everybody for the presentations today. Thank everybody for coming out for public comments. I just want to take a minute to recognize the anniversary of our friends in Parkland today, too.
Thank you, Mary. Anybody else? Okay. I do have something really quick. Sam, thanks for the budget. It's, like you said, there's a lot of accounts that trickle up to those, but having a high-level understanding is very beneficial, because at the end of the day, we have to understand, like, sometimes when that money is granted, then it's taken back, and then where the money fits into the budget so that we can afford to do the things that we're trying to do. And I'm happy that we're going to project 3 years out. That's going to allow us to make sure that we don't have some shortfalls down the road, because some of the things that we're putting in place, we need to make sure that we continue, that we have the resources in order to do that. You know, I think it's very, very important that people understand one thing. Parents are the parents. Parents provide the basis for their students. And what I mean by that is when you send a student to school and they don't treat others the way that they expect to be treated, that's reflection. It's reflection from the home, and it's a reflection from the district. We must work together so that we don't have these kind of things happening. It just shocks me and it saddens me that in 2023, we're in this place where I might not agree with you, but I'm not gonna threaten you. I'm not gonna take action against you. You believe what you want to believe. I'm going to believe what I want to believe. Shake each other's hand. Go the other way. Parents need to get on board. They need to get on board. They need to do it real fast. Anybody else?
No.
Okay, meeting's adjourned.